At this time, I'd like to invite Judge Emmett and our supply chain panel up to the stage.
In the next 40 or 50 minutes, we're going to hear from 4 experts about supply chains. And you're invited to ask questions. Now, whether or not we get to your questions, that's a different subject. And but do feel free to submit questions, and they'll be on this screen in front of me, and hopefully we'll have time to do that. A brief introduction. Some of you think you know who I am, but in fact, I'm somebody different now. I'm now the fellow in Energy and Transportation Policy at the Baker Institute at Rice University. And there's no easy way around it. I'm a transportation wonk. I also chair the Texas Freight Advisory Council for TxDOT and have done that for quite some time. So that's who I am. Now, who are these people sitting to my left? Well, they gave me a bunch of hard names to try and figure out how to pronounce, but to my immediate left, Cynthia Yog, America's Logistics and Distribution Manager for ExxonMobil. Make sure I get these right. Captain Clint Winiger, Presiding Officer for the Houston Pilots. They changed. Frank Vingerhoots, President of Katoon-Nashi, and John Keck, Senior Operations Manager for the Gulf Coast for Maersk. So let's dive right in. First, let's start with Cynthia. And then we'll go down the line very quickly. Tell us about your current role, because when we talk about supply chains, you know, COVID suddenly introduced the term supply chain to the general public. But there's not one supply chain. There's a supply chain for every product, for every company. They're all different. So we have a lot of supply chains. So in a brief, just a couple of minutes, Cynthia, tell us about your supply chains, who you are, what your role is in that.
Yeah, so as Ed said, I work for ExxonMobil Product Solutions, which if you're not familiar with that is the consolidation about a year ago of our heritage fuels, lubes, and chemical company within Product Solutions. So when you think about ExxonMobil, you might think about oil, gas, chemicals, but you don't necessarily think about or understand the supply chains that are necessary to support our businesses. And at a corporate level, if you step back and look at all of our supply chain functions and capabilities, we really do rival the scale of a lot of large logistics or consumer product companies. We spend over $20 billion a year in supply chain costs, serving 25,000 customers in 150 countries worldwide. So we have, we ship around 750,000 TEUs globally on an annual basis, with the Port of Houston being our largest exporting port. We also have a global marine function, including Sea River Maritime, which we have around 500 ships a day on the water at any time. That's a port call every 18 minutes. And we also have a large rail fleet. We manage the largest private rail fleet in North America to serve our fuels and lubes chemical customers, with around 33,000 cars in North America. And chemicals, chemicals is really one of the larger growth businesses within ExxonMobil. And that growth is really driven by demand for polyethylene, polypropylene, and that growth is really largely in Asia, as they're able to move into the middle class and they urbanize and they're able to afford products that are more supportive of modern conveniences like food packaging, cars, modern housing, furnishing, appliances. But a lot of that supply growth has been delivered from North America, where we've seen a big boom in oil and gas, and that's made us more competitive on our feedstock and energy costs. And so that's what's really driving growth. And so here in the Houston Port region, You know, we've invested in around 2.6 million tons of polyethylene capacity since 2017, and that's largely shipped via export out of the port of Houston. But then the supply chains that are needed to support that, we have a vast array of pipelines that support our chemical feedstocks and olefin products. Once you turn it into polyethylene pellets, we ship it in rail cars all across North America. We can also deliver some of that in bulk trucks. And then, as we mentioned, we also package it into bags, either at our manufacturing facilities or with our third-party service providers. We at the warehouses, and we stuff them into containers, dray them to the port, and ship all around the world. We're up to shipping around 2,000 containers a week out of the port of Houston. So that's just intended to be a quick, high-level overview of our supply chain for one of our more relevant business lines.
Good, thank you very much. Captain, I'm going to skip you for a minute. Frank, supply chain.
Well, good morning, everybody. Katunasi, I don't know all of you who know Katunasi, we're a global logistics supplier, and we came to the US in 1997. At that time, we had about 180,000 square foot warehouse here in Underwood. That was our first location, and 180,000 square foot, that's more or less 3 football fields. Right now, forward 2023, we have about 120 football fields as warehouse space here in Houston, just to give you an idea on the size. So we are, like Cynthia says, here in the US, we are part of the supply chain. So we receive rail cars into our facilities, where then we will take the polymers that are in there, out of there, put them in a bag, put them on a pallet, into a container, and off they go. Now, the volumes we do, just to give you an idea, on a monthly basis here in Houston, we do about 2,400, 2,500 rail cars. Now, one rail car is about 4 containers. So we do about 10,000 containers a month out of the Houston port. Now, the supply chain is more than just Houston alone. Our customers want some diversification. We do the same in Norfolk, in Charleston, and so forth. But I'm a firm believer, and we've discussed that many times with the port, that the supply chain going from A to B, the shortest way is the best supply chain. Now, my point of view is that you need to go out of Houston if you want to have a cheap and reliable supply chain. The one issue, obviously, is, and we all have experienced it, hurricanes. I know Mr. Emmett has had some experience in the past about that. So that's why there is some diversification. But if you think about it, the product is made here. Rail cars, they come to our facilities from the plants. With one of our main customers, ExxonMobil, we have a shuttle service where rail cars takes them a day to get to our facility. If you go to the East Coast or even to Dallas, you're looking at 2 weeks going there, 2 weeks coming back. Just think about that. Your working capital, the rail cars you need. So Houston is the place to be, and we will continue to build here and to get bigger. We bought 1,000 acres in Baytown, where we'll continue to grow. We can't grow in La Porte nowhere because we're built out. But so that's just a little bit of what we do here in Houston.
Good. Thank you very much. When we talk about international transportation, we're clearly talking about ocean-going ships. John, enlighten us. How do you determine what routes you're going to serve? Is it purely customer-driven, or is it geographically driven?
It's a little bit of both. We try to make a connection with our customers to see where they're looking at going, what's coming up in their supply chain pipeline, and how's the best way to get them to that location in the quickest possible way. The last couple of years, as we all know, have been very difficult. You see waiting time increasing in Los Angeles, waiting time in Houston, Savannah. So it could be where 2 years ago, coming through Los Angeles, railing it to the middle of the country was the quickest, easiest route. If Los Angeles starts having problems, then that transit through the Panama Canal makes it a lot more attractive to come into Houston. You get a little bit quicker service, a little bit faster turnaround, even though the ocean transit might be a little longer, your overall transit would be potentially less. So we tried to talk to our customers, see where they're going. A lot of it is just an ingrained route that has been there since the beginning of Maersk, and those are the big hubs. Those have the best transit facilities and inland facilities available. But some of it is, hey, we have a customer who wants to do this new routing. We'll take a look at it and see if there's a demand for it, and we can get it up and running.
So brief follow-up on that then. How much time does it take to reposition assets and redesign your allocation there?
It really depends on what we have available. When we had all of our fleet mobilized with all the volumes going on the last couple of years, it's difficult to find lease vessels. But to get a lease vessel up and running, you can look at probably about 3 months or so to be able to get a new vessel in and through a service that's designed.
Okay. Well, when we talk about supply chains, there are so many moving parts. And one of the parts that a lot of people don't know about would be the role of the pilots. And of course, when you say pilots to the general public, they think pilots. But those of us in the industry, we understand we're talking about the men and women that go out and get on these ships and bring them into the port. What's your biggest challenge in doing that, Captain?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is weather, and we know the economic impact of shutting down the channel for fog or hurricane events. We don't take it lightly. One day a channel closure is over $1 billion economic impact to everyone. So, but to try to manage fog, manage weather, that's our biggest challenge. And then we got the growth that everyone on this panel has talked about. So trying to make sure that we're ready for that growth. With the Port of Houston expediting the Project 11 and the widening of the channel and to make sure we keep up with the supply chain. We're on track to move over 20,000 ships this year, more than LA and New York combined. So a lot of movement, so traffic and weather.
20,000 ships. Wow. I'll ask what might seem an ignorant question, but does every major port have pilots like your operation?
Yes, it's every port's got to have a state licensed pilot so the captain, most of which are foreign flag vessels, they don't just come to the dock. So a state licensed pilot will get aboard the vessel, several miles offshore, climb up the side of the ship, rope ladder, night and day, all kinds of weather events, and get the ship safely up to the berth. When it's done with the cargo operations, we get on board, and then we'll get the ship safely offshore.
Okay. Cynthia, we're coming back to you. We have a question, Pete, from WGA. What is your biggest challenge over the next 5 years? And I'm going to phrase it a little differently because I'd written down, what keeps you up at night? What worries you the most?
Yeah, so over the past 10 years, we've had, I think, around $100 billion of investment in the petrochemical manufacturing industry in the Houston Port region alone. And infrastructure is really important to support that and future growth. And when you think about the past couple of, and the port has done a fantastic job of meeting that growth, growing to 4 million TEUs last year, about half of which supports exports. And when you look back at the past couple of years, there's a lot of things that we can learn, but still worry me about the future, right? We saw that big demand growth. We saw the shift of imports from the West Coast to the East Coast and Gulf Coast. And that really caused a lot of constraints, marine delays, variability. It increased congestion at the port and on the roads, increased driver turn times, equipment shortages, labor shortages, the whole thing. And so although that has calmed down, it still worries me, and there's a lot that we can learn about that. From a producer experience, what that meant was that we saw that marine variability really backed up inventory on shore. So we saw high inventory, high costs, that made us less competitive globally. And ultimately, it caused some production to be cut back at times. And so what we understand now more than ever is that flexibility and resiliency really needs to be built into our base supply chain operations, and it's a big component about thinking of growth. And so it's really important that the port, gate and operating practices remain efficient, that we remain competitive relative to other ports in our service level offering. And as an exporter, that includes having enough on-site storage to support, reliable and consistent ERD windows and investment ahead of future growth. So, we're very appreciative of the efforts that the port has done to improve efficiency, and we're supportive of their $1 billion investment plan, which should grow us to 7 million TEUs. I can't quite get my head around how the road infrastructure and the labor force is going to support that with the current operating hours. But we're certainly supportive of TxDOT's proposal on expanding 225 and the efforts that have been made to increase heavy haul routes, which is really important to our industry. So all of that is, important. I also think that Houston, relative to other ports, has a fairly limited, intermodal offering. So I hope that there's increase from importers and exporters in interest in that, and that marine and ports and railroads can work together to offer that in the future, because I think that'd be a great way to get trucks off the road and increase fluidity. I also think there's lots of digital opportunities, but try to keep it short.
Okay, before we go to Frank, I'm going to ask you the same question, what keeps you up at night? But for those of you who have not followed the Texas Freight Advisory Committee, get on TxDOT website, look at it, because a lot of what you just talked about is exactly what the state of Texas is trying to grapple with, to get their hands around. What does that infrastructure look like? How do we get more intermodal traffic, because the trucks aren't going to be able to handle it long term? So what keeps you up at night?
Well, I sleep pretty good at night, so it's not really, I don't stay awake. But there are obviously several things that you could be lying awake from, and one of them is that maybe later they can talk about a little bit is the Panama Canal. Obviously, containers need to be able to go freely in and out of the port, and obviously Asia is important. Coming from Asia through the Panama Canal, that's something that you need to have enough water there to get the ships through. But now, if you come a little bit more local, rail is a very important portion of our business. And the infrastructure, now I'm talking a little bit more about Baytown. If you look at the area in Baytown in Chambers where we're at, the Eldon Junction there's actually only one line going in there, in and out. And to me, that needs to be doubled up. But I do believe that the railroads are working on that, on getting that more fluid. Here in La Porte, those things seem to be going good, but you see a tendency of there is more and more volume coming, but there's not really more, let's say, lines being built from A to B, but there's a lot more rail cars coming online, a lot more storage. They need to go somewhere. So people are building more, let's say, storage yard capacity. We already have 2,000 spaces in Houston alone for rail cars. And I was at a seminar last week and did a presentation there. But the variability we have there is the lowest point we were at this year combined for Houston was, I think, 450 rail cars on site. The highest was nearly 1,800. So that's a 1,400 cars difference. If you just think about that space, that's about 150 acres of land space, full or not full, with rail cars. So there's a huge swing. So things are getting more and more, the swings are so big that you really need to have huge capacity to be able to handle that. And that's something, obviously, that is a challenge. It creates a lot of investment. It needs a lot of investment to be able to handle that. And then the labor force, obviously, is something that needs to be tackled, and a lot of local communities and universities are helping. But we actually started our own, what we call Katoenasi University, KTNU, where we started our own university, and we're actually working together with the University of Houston to create the talent for the future. We have like 5 people dedicated who are only training people and making sure we have the right amount of people to be able to handle our business and our growth. So those are things that are in the works, and it's not, there is solutions to it, but obviously it takes time and money and effort to be able to tackle those.
You've taken us to a topic that we're going to get to in a minute, and that is supply chains all rely on people. And that workforce question we're going to get to in just a minute. But before we go to the ocean carrier point of view, I have to mention something that we've talked about a lot at the Freight Advisory Committee, and that is a modest-sized container ship comes in Port Houston. Say it's only got 5,000 boxes on it. Maybe half of those are going to go to the DFW area. That's 2,500 trucks on I-45. There's got to be a better way and we're not going to be able to keep doing that over and over. And so what you said, Cynthia, is correct. The limiting factor for the port is going to be this inland infrastructure going forward. So what do you as an ocean carrier worry about going forward?
Well, a lot of what Cynthia said I do worry about, but that's actually job security for me, because it's my job to smooth all that out, to get the vessels in, out, quick, safe, and inexpensive. Do a lot of that with the help of the Port of Houston, great partnership with the pilots, the tugs, the ILA, everyone that goes into getting those containers off the vessel, into the yard, out on the road, or vice versa if it's an export. But I think what really is something that we have to have a constant care of is the cyber security of the information that flows between our customers, the ports, the stevedores. Just, when you think about it, moving a box from point A to point B is real simple. It's all the complexity in between that can go wrong. Unfortunately, Maersk did have a cyber incident quite a while back. I was there for that. 8-hour day turned into a 15, 16-hour day because everything that we were doing through EDI had to be done manually. All the container locations in the yard, all the vessel stowage, how those containers get onto the vessel, and which containers are available for pickup. So we have to have a constant care and look to the future of what's coming down the pipe. All of our employees just went through the annual cybersecurity training. New protocols are coming out that help us to make it more secure on a day-to-day basis. But even if one of those entities gets shut down for a cybersecurity issue, it affects everyone in that line.
So, Captain, your people are in a business where nobody knows they exist unless something goes wrong. So I think I know what you're going to say, but what worries the pilots? Not in terms of just weather and things, but in terms of equipment, constant training that has to go on. What concerns you?
Safety on the channel is our #1 priority, and getting the ship to and from the dock with no incidents. Like I said, we had 20,000 ship movements. There's 6 times as many barge traffic movements. So, we'll have 1.4 million vessel interactions in a year. So, just a lot of traffic on the waterway. Pilot ladder safety is a big one for us. We're going alongside the ship in sometimes 6-8 foot seas in the middle of the night, and we come alongside and we trust that they tied the rope ladder correctly. We'll just stand on it, and sometimes we lose about 1 pilot a year for trying to board a ship. One will pass away. I think we've had 4 this year alone. So pilot ladder safety is a big one.
Wow.
The other one that's really got us focused on right now is as the world turns to a focus on emissions and lowering their carbon footprint. Right now, there's a big push in the maritime industry to reduce the emissions on vessels. And we just want to make sure as we move to that we do it in a smart, safe way. There's talk now of just derating the engine to instantly get the result they want in a mission standpoint, but that's causes us some concern in maneuverability, stopping distance, all those things. We want to make sure that we get the ship back and forth safely without any incidents in the port.
I'm going to go right back to you, John. Since he mentioned emissions, what changes are coming to the ocean carriers? I've read various articles about the use of ammonia or hydrogen or other fuels. What do you put you on the spot? Where do you think the industry's going in terms of future fuels?
You know, you ask that question to 5 different lines and you get 10 different answers. Right now, Maersk has on order approximately 17 green methanol vessels. One of them, the smallest one, is already in service. It's a little shuttle feeder in North Europe. We have some 17,000 TEU vessels. They'll be coming out over the next 3 to 5 years. As our fleet ages, we will be replacing them primarily with green methanol. Now, the issue that we have with that is green methanol isn't available in every port. Yet it isn't, a ready supply like, bunkers are today. So we've actually paired with a couple companies to help develop those supply lines to make sure that we have what we need, where we need, when we need. We're also looking at green trucks. We have some trucks out in California and Chicago. Again, it's a little bit of the chicken and the egg. Do we get the chargers up before we get the trucks, or do we get the trucks and then figure out how to charge them? So that's something that we have to work with industry on to make sure that we have the charging capabilities, the regulations, the weight requirements, and the trucker hours that are needed to be able to recharge these trucks where we need them to make sure that it's still safe but efficient as well.
Green methanol.
Yes, sir.
Tell the audience what that is.
You got me on that one. It is a form of methanol that is cleaner burning than the regular stuff. I don't know exactly how it works or what it is. I do know that the vessels do have the ability to still transfer back to the regular bunkers that we use today if it's not available. But it is a cleaner burning fuel than we have right now.
Putting in a shameless plug here for the Baker Institute, we're about to launch a study of what are all the future fuel possibilities and which ones can be scaled to be provided worldwide, whether you're talking about renewable aviation fuel or diesels. For those of you who don't listen to Channel 146 on Sirius XM radio, that's Road Dog Trucking, and I'm on there regularly. And if you talk to the truckers, they have a whole different mindset about what the future is going to hold, because so many of them are independent owner operators. So I'm going to quickly, because I don't want this to get away from us, what's the biggest gap right now in the workforce? What do we need? I know San Jacinto College is really focused on that moving forward. But I'll start with you, Cynthia. Workforce needs of ExxonMobil in the supply chain.
Of ExxonMobil, yeah. So throughout the supply chain, I think at any given time there's constraints in the workforce, whether it's at the port, in trucking, warehousing. They can very quickly become, constrained and limit us. At ExxonMobil, we've tended to hire chemical engineers, mechanical engineers, and turn them into supply chain experts. We're actually in the process of forming our own supply chain company where we're pulling out 2,400 people across the corporation into our corporate supply chain. And with that, we're really looking on focusing the development of supply chain expertise. We're doing more hiring of people with experience in the industry in the supply chain area, and we're hoping to grow our overall capability and competence in the supply chain function itself.
Okay. Well, the pilots are kind of a special case when it comes to workforce, but
We are, for the near term, we're not going to have any issues from our standpoint. We take a small number of people a year, and we've got a huge supply of applicants, but we do see the need of maintaining that supply. So partnering with the Port of Houston, and Jackie's been a fantastic partner over there. We've created a couple of maritime high schools in the area. Now we're in 5 different school districts, partnering with Sanjak and their maritime program. We started a 501c3 about 20 years ago, and we've contributed $1 million in maritime scholarships over the last 20 years to try to get that next generation to fill those spots. I know at the Sanjak program, it's about a 2-year program. After their first year, they go out in industry. Industry needs those people so bad, they're trying to steal them before they finish their second year. So, and if they do finish their second year, it's 100% placement. That's how much need there is. So, we're just excited about contributing to that, and anything we can do to help, spread the word. We want to get that next generation excited, or even know that we have a ship channel, or that there's great jobs here in the area.
I was going to say, all of you in the audience, if you know young people, talk to them about being in the transportation, logistics, supply chain world. It's, I won't say it's a totally secure future, but we're always going to need to move stuff, to put it simply. So you mentioned KNU, is that what you're calling your university?
Katunas University, KTNU, yeah. So we started that program about 4 years ago because at that time it was our industry after the shale gas boom, let's say, it became a lot more busy, and not only us but also our competition, everybody was looking for the same people, right? And then I called it a little bit the rat race. So what happened, you have a certain smaller pool of people. Now the easiest way is to offer more money and make people skip around, right? Which is not the philosophy that we maintained. And we said, well, okay, then the only way to do this, because we didn't want to enter that race, we said, okay, let's train our own people. Now, the people we're missing right now, or what is more difficult, is like technicians. That's a huge challenge, because you have equipment that is very specialized, and to maintain that, it takes 3, 4, 5 years for somebody to get a little bit proficient in that. So luckily, we're a global company. We can use people from all over the world that we bring here to help train our people, but that's a challenge. And then with regards to, let's say, forklift drivers and reach truck drivers, those are all pretty skilled jobs, and it takes a while for those people to get going. People think it's that easy, but it's not that easy. We try and automate quite a bit. Automation can help us a lot with that, and we continue to do that. But you'll still need people at the end of the day to load the truck, right? Automated truck loading is not there yet. We have some self-driving trucks on site. We do a project like that in Singapore, where we have, it's together with ExxonMobil, where we actually have trucks going from one warehouse to a yard, where the truck is a driverless truck. So we are working on that, but it's not on the street yet, and it's not all that easy, but you need to invest in that. So those are solutions that we're working on to improve the supply chain and make it easier. Now, with sustainability, our company, we're pretty big in, we've invested a lot in solar panels, so all our warehouses will now start equipping that also here in Houston, but in Belgium, for example, we already have probably about 6-7 million square feet of warehouses equipped with solar panels. Wind turbines, where we actually, wind power, we're generating that ourselves, so those are things that we're working on. Now the latest actually we're working on is actually storing energy and batteries to actually, because wind and solar, yeah, it creates it when the sun is there or the wind is there, but if it's not, you still need power. So we're actually now working on huge battery farms to store that power, that it can go back to the grid to optimize that. So those are some of the things that we're doing as a company on a global scale.
Okay. Speaking of global companies, I guess Maersk fits that definition really well. In addition to the people who actually work on the ships, what are the other employment needs, workforce needs that a company like Maersk faces?
You know, like I said, the people that work on the ships, they're the ones that really drive the production of the ships. The ship-to-shore crane drivers are, you know, absolutely vital. It's a very specialized piece of the puzzle when you're putting everything on the vessel. But as far as the day-to-day operations, customer service is a huge aspect of Maersk. Making sure that documents are in place, clearances are done, everything is ready to flow. So customer service is kind of the heartbeat of Maersk, where we interact with customers to make sure that their day-to-day needs are met. Keeping that workforce up to date and have that information available at their fingertips when they need it, as they need it, is one of the biggest challenges.
Okay, there's a question about the Panama Canal and the drought causing low water levels. That was mentioned earlier. We'll talk about that. Kind of the final question, and this one's pretty technical, but if and when the Department of Energy names Houston as a hydrogen hub, what challenges do you see for the port? Are there currently plans in discussion to address these?
I better take that one.
You had.
So ExxonMobil, you know, we have announced, we haven't formally funded yet, but we are in the process of building a hydrogen facility in Baytown that will include carbon capture and storage, and we're working that to improve reduce the emissions from both ExxonMobil, but also the industry at large. And so that will require pipelines and infrastructure. If it gets turned into ammonia, we'll need ammonia shipping capability as well. So I think it's a great opportunity for Houston in general. I'm not sure that I can completely talk through all the supply chain needs as of yet, because it's still really early days, but definitely pipelines, shipping will be involved in that supply chain for sure.
So in our final 2 minutes, I'm going to try and formulate this where you can answer it fairly quickly. The two issues I think that are going to change the supply chains the most. One is the whole question of environment, what fuels are used, how do you do the feedstocks, all that. And secondly is geopolitics. Is China going to be the future, or is India going to be the future, for example? And what's that going to do to all of your operations? And I'm going to start at that end, and we've got 1:24 seconds. So,
I think the biggest shift that you see in shipping right now is the move for nearshoring. A lot of north-south trade, Mexico taking on some supply chain, moving on rail as opposed to vessel. So how that ferrets out through the future, what is that going to do to our lines? You talk about the Panama Canal, that is where most of the stuff comes through from China. So if the Panama Canal continues to be an issue, China becomes an issue, you're going to see a lot more of that nearshoring coming north-south through South America, Central America.
okay, Frank?
Well, we also have an operation in Mexico, so we for sure see that Mexico is getting a lot more busy on the nearshoring. But also here in the US, you see a lot of investments. I was talking to some guys in Austin. Samsung is building plants, Tesla. So I think the nearshoring is a big deal. Now, I quickly want to come back on the point that Cynthia made earlier on trucks on the road. There is a project that we're working with the Port of Houston, is to try and get containers out of the port in a kind of a tunnel system, and still in the early days, but it is a viable project, my point of view, get the containers in a kind of a tunnel away from the terminal and more out to the distribution centers, like, for example, the Baytown area, to start off, because there's thousands of containers going there every day, and that could be electrified without people, automated, so those are things that will help us a lot, I believe, in the future.
Captain?
I think, as the panel has said, and most people know here, is dependability. Everyone needs dependability, and you have labor issues and environmental issues on the West Coast, and it makes Houston a more attractive place. You have some pipelines that are feeding Corpus Christi are becoming full of capacity, it's shifting to Houston. So we're seeing a lot of growth from both of those segments, and I think no matter what happens, Houston's the place that makes things more dependable. People are going to focus here.
Okay. Cynthia, last word's yours.
Yeah, I mean, with a corporation the size of ExxonMobil, we are always subject to geopolitics and changing. And so we just really try to leverage our flexibility and our scale, consolidate our capability to be able to react to whichever way the geopolitical winds blow. But yeah, it's really about flexibility, resiliency, and that's what we'll continue to focus on.
Good. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, join me in thanking this excellent panel this morning.